everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm Michelle Carlson, the Acting Executive Director of the Lansing Art Gallery and Education Center. And we appreciate you coming out on this beautiful evening tonight for a treat. Our ArtPath Artist Talk. Nevin Speerbrecker. Sorry, Speerbrecker. Excuse me. And he's going to tell us about his art. His art installation is actually down here a ways. If you haven't seen it after the talk, you can walk down there. It's very beautiful. But the path was too small for us to sit there safely, so we're going to have Nevin talk to us tonight about the art. And then we do have another artist talk next week on Thursday after the holiday, so we hope to see you out there. And if you want more information about our art path and good, you can visit us at our table. If you like our t-shirts, you can purchase one of those from Sarah or Sabrin. And hope that you will also come to the gallery and see our next installation that's going to be opening next week as well. So, thank you. Nevin, are you ready?
Good evening. Thank you for coming. And I appreciate you showing up. Can you hear me? Yeah. There we go. There we go. Got to talk a little louder. The Hot Air Balloon, which is a piece I did for them, dedicated to the kids in the children's reading section. And then I work currently as a graphic designer and an artist at Bradford Printing, which I do all of the graphic design and digital printing for them. My experience started back when I was pretty much 14, was my first paying gig. I did a political sign for a candidate running for city council, and which he didn't win. It wasn't my fault. And then I did a lot of work for different people, commissions, and superhero drawings. Some people have seen them. I've done some work for a couple of ad agencies here in town, illustrations for them. I'm a freelance illustrator by trade and graduated from Lansing Community College back in the 80s and did a lot of stuff since then. I started back doing artwork pretty not full-time, but pretty much, as you would say, constantly drawing. As my wife says, I'm taking up too much room in the house. I did a show with the Lansing Art Council in 2018, which was a tremendous show, a lot of turnout, and really appreciated that show and exposure. And then I did several shows, including at the Eagle Monk Brewery. I've done a couple shows, and I see Sonia here from there, and I appreciate that her coming. And so most of my experience has been doing graphic design and illustration. Now, the installation piece being dedicated to the city parks, it's designed as a piece. My wife gave me the inspiration for the idea. She came up when we saw the bench, we saw how the green was growing over the bench and everything. She said it was a perfect space for a garden, to picture a garden, which in my mind, if you've gone to Europe, all the yards are called gardens, and they're really nicely done. Well, I wanted it to be kind of a rustic garden where you would be invited to kind of walk into it. When you look at it, you want to walk into the space. And so I added some of the wildlife that you see in nature around the city, and it's kind of dedicated to those parks in the town that a lot of people don't know about. A lot of people heard of Rudder Park, North River Drive Park, Dodge Park, and those type of areas around town. But there's parks that are throughout the city that are just little community parks. You can go into almost every neighborhood in the city of Lansing and find a park. It may be just as small as a city lot. One little house is gone. There's a park there that's been dedicated to somebody there. So this whole concept is, so for me, was a concept of that was dedicated to those type of spaces, those green spaces. And I do a lot of Native American art, and green spaces are really important to the Native community. It's what keeps us grounded. It's what keeps your emotions grounded to the earth. We all come from the earth. We all leave via the earth. And you feel, I wanted to portray that you would feel that you're welcome in the space. So the piece is designed to be an open doorway or an open gate. And there's a little brick, stone wall. If you haven't seen it, there's a little kind of a stone wall with a little opening and some wildlife. And it looks like you could walk through the space. It's also kind of a neat little piece because the bench is there. And a lot of my friends who aren't here today, but a lot of my friends have actually gone down, seen it, and took selfies in the space. And they, like, some of them actually took in their hands, and there's a rabbit in the painting, and it made it look like they're petting the rabbit. One person made it look like they're feeding the rabbit. Another friend of mine just had their children set in the middle and with the animals looking at them. So it's kind of a cute little piece, and so I dedicated it to the city to be that kind of an open doorway to the gardens and to the parks. That's pretty much the secret of the garden. Anybody has any questions? I'm more than happy to ask.
I had a question. How long did you work on that piece?
In total, because I work a 8 to 5 job, I would come home and work pretty much from like 6 o'clock, like right after dinner, 6:30, up until like maybe 8 o'clock, and then probably, if I remember right, it took me about 6 days. Anybody else?
I have a question. So, have you ever done other public artwork? It sounds like you did, but how did you get started in like doing public art, and like what attracted you to doing work in the public realm?
Well, my first public piece was actually a piece at the South Lansing Library prior to the one that's there now. There was a mural, a little space, a little nook over a water fountain, and the librarian at the time had talked to my wife who works there and said, could you have your husband come and see about painting a mural over the water fountain for the summer reading program? And it was Flash in the Reading was a reading program. So what I did is I had painted a little mural. It was a nook about 2.5 foot wide by 6 or 8 feet. And I painted it like books were splashing out of the water fountain. There was a big splash. And that was kind of like the first public piece that you could say anybody in the city would have saw. And since then, it's most of my mural work has actually been contracted or commissioned by businesses, and most of them are in little private businesses. There's one on the south side of town. There's a U-Haul company that also rents out a space inside. They have a conference room that they rent out. And I painted a Tupaman Fall mural in the Lower Falls on their wall. They commissioned me to do that painting. And that one's 9 feet by 18 feet. And another company that knew them had contracted me to do another mural. So I've done a couple commissions, corporate murals, but nothing really in public besides this piece and murals at the time.
Spray cans or paint with brushes?
It was completely done with brush work. Even my murals are all done with brushes. I do a lot of 4 to 6 inch brushes all the way down to the fine tip brushes. Even the bigger murals that with brushes or rollers. The backgrounds I'll block in with roller and then fill in with brush. All of them so far have been done with acrylic paint. Like this piece is painted with acrylic paint, and then to protect it, O'Leary Paint gave me, or I bought some sealer for it. That is an acrylic-based sealer that's exterior grade, and it seems to be holding up really, really well.
Hey, Nevin, hold the mic up. We can hardly hear you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
You don't know this. Is this a piece here with the little trail? Is this part of that park?
Yeah, the river trail goes all the way through town.
Oh, I didn't realize it.
So the Lansing Art Gallery does this piece. I think this is the 5th year? The 5th year that the ArtPath has gone on. First time I've ever applied, and thanks to a friend of mine who is here, Brian Whitfield, reminded me to apply, and out of a whim at the last minute we did, and luckily they selected my piece. Appreciate that, my friend. Anybody else?
Talked about parks and green spaces. Do you have a favorite park that you went, or?
Well, I grew up on the south end, so there was several parks, and one right down the street from me, which was like the go-to park for everybody in the neighborhood, which was called Poxon Park. And the other place everybody went to, which now is a big park in Lansing called Hawk Island. At that time, it was gravel pits, so a lot of people hung out there. And then the other parks we went to were Moores River Drive because of the swimming pool, and then Hunters Park because of the swimming pool. So it's when you can't beat a city-owned pool, because in the heat of the summer, like we're having right now, you gotta love city-owned pools. That's where everybody goes. So, anybody else?
What would you like to work on next?
What would I like to work on next? That is a really good question. I would love to be able to do a big Native American piece mural. There is a couple opportunities going on right now that I'm thinking about, and I have a little bit of time to apply to those, but I would really like to do a huge Native American mural piece, just because I just feel a kinship to the people.
Do you have a dog park?
I'm sorry?
Does Lansing have a dog park?
There is a few parks that allow dogs, and most actually do allow dogs, but there are actually a couple dog-run parks.
It'd be fun to take some dogs to the dog park.
Talk about last year.
Oh, no, I didn't. Thank you. Yeah, one of the other public works, sorry, I totally blew this one, is LAFQ Credit Union did several art pieces lately, and one of the pieces I did for them was the LAFQ letters, their logo, which they opened to people. I was selected for my design for the letter L, which was a painting of a landscape and had one of their credit union branches on a landscape, and it kind of looked like you were down a winding road. And then lately, which they've won awards for, is their love and equality work, which Brian Whitfield is a member, did a piece for that, as well as I did, and my piece was for the word change, which kind of represents the thought of people need to change their mind on opinion of the LGBTQ community. If you look at the piece, there's fruits and vegetables on a vine going into a ketchup bottle, basically to tell people to catch up. And the fruits and vegetables are in the rainbow colors to celebrate LGBTQ plus communities. Thank you, Brian. I totally forgot about that. Anybody else?
So you said that you also do graphic design. Can you tell us more about that, and then also like how that might influence the artwork that you do? Or
Yeah, I actually learned a lot of my graphic design through high school. I had an instructor, Lance Shade, who was a tremendous educator for the Lansing community schools, public school system. He was the vocational arts teacher for Lansing schools. A tremendous artist. He taught me tons of work, how to keyline, how to do basic graphic design, and then I went to LCC to embellish that experience. And so a lot of that I learned from him to start, and then several of the instructors like Dennis Preston, Jack Bergeron, a lot of them are still local artists. Diana Grinwis are people that taught me at LCC, and I took their experiences. And a lot of my graphic design, I don't do graphic design to make a statement for an award. I'm not a big award person with my graphic design. My graphic design work and my background for that is to make people want your product. So to do design work for an award, fine. But if I get an award, fine. But if your product doesn't sell for my graphic design, I didn't do a very good graphic design. And in a way, that's kind of leads me into my artwork, because I do my artwork for the people that see it. I'm not really worried to win an award or get a big acknowledgement. It just happens, with the LAFQ stuff, they won a huge national award for the credit union because of that campaign, and I was part of that, which makes me feel good. But I'm always interested in doing artwork that people want to see and gives people a happy experience. So it's not more like I do art for people, kind of like for me, but more for people. I do a lot of commission work. During COVID, I did a whole thing where I turned people into superheroes. So I have somebody email me and ask me, hey, my favorite superhero is Spider-Woman. Or my child's superhero is Thor or something like that. So can you draw them as that? So I would do that, those type of things. It makes people happy. That's what I feel what art is supposed to do, is make you feel happy. I hope that answered that question.
What would you say your biggest changes in your art style from when you started to now? Or your practice, any of it really?
Well, probably just experience. Knowing how to draw and paint, for me, it just comes from practice, and practice, and practice, and practice. I'm not a realist painter, per se. Though some of my work looks realistic, I'm not a realistic, it doesn't have to be a photograph, and I don't paint that way or draw that way. I like to interpret the stuff I draw and paint to convey a message, as in illustration, and that's what I do my illustration work, when I do illustration work, and that's probably the biggest change in my artwork, because when I was younger and stuff, I was doing artwork for artwork's sake, so I was doing artwork just to do artwork. And now I do artwork to, one, make money, but to convey a message, to illustrate a message. And that's probably the biggest change in my artwork since the beginning, is to convey that message. Anybody else? Sorry. Oh, yeah. I also do t-shirts. So I've been doing t-shirts since the early 80s. I worked at a t-shirt shop right out of college. And so I do a bunch of t-shirts and illustrative t-shirts. I have a whole series of t-shirts called Sacred Directions, which is dedicated to the Native American medicine wheel, if you understand understand what that is. But it's all dedicated by Ojibwe and Lakota stories. So you can find those on my Facebook and Instagram page. A few of them are on my Etsy page, so you can find those. Which, if you look for Art by Nevin, you'll pretty much find me. So.
Do you have any suggestions or advice for emerging artists if they want to get
Advice for emerging artists to get their art in public forum. I would say the biggest advice I actually got from my friend, which is just do it. Get your applications in. Just apply. It's amazing that the feeling you get when you apply. For one, I never expected to get this piece. One, because I was so late in entry, and because I entered literally at the last minute of the last day. I think I sent my application in at 11 o'clock the night before it was deadline at midnight. But you just go for it. Because everybody's art style and everybody's talent is different. Every artist is not a cookie cutter. We're not cookie cutter people. I mean, you have artists that like to mimic other artists, but you still know the difference. And we're all artists are just, if you're an artist, an emerging artist, a starting out artist, whether it be painting, sculpture, poetry, any kind of artwork, just get it out there. It's, not everyone's going to like your work, and I've had that experience. But you're going to find that more people will find your art interesting and in June. More people are going to find interest in your art than those that are going to complain about it or not like it. So a lot of people get disheartened when they're starting out because they don't know. They're afraid, and fear is a big factor. Artists are kind of fragile children. We're all fragile children. But to put yourself out in front of people is a little scary. It's like doing this. It's a little scary. But once you do it and once you try it, you'll find that it's not as difficult as you find. And don't get disheartened. Yeah, you might get a bad word the very first time. I talked to a gentleman today. I'll use this as a story. Sorry, this might take on a little long. I talked to a gentleman today. He's a little younger than myself. And he's been doing graphic design and been in the arts for a long time, as well as I have. And he went to art school. And one of the professors shot him down on one of his paintings. And he immediately stopped painting and went into doing printing and graphic design and doing that type of stuff. And when he found out that I had this piece, he said, I wish I would do that. I wish I'd just pick up a brush again. And I looked right at him and I said, you need to do it. Just pick up the brush. It doesn't matter what it looks like. What matters is putting the paint on the canvas. Because that means you're trying, you're doing, and that makes a difference. And if I had to say anything to a younger artist, in which I talk to several younger artists all the time,
Ideas, to get see what other artists are doing, and pick up the strokes,
I haven't really been out of the area for art. Now, I did go to Paris a few years ago with my wife, and for work, and we ended up going to the Louvre, and because I had art history in college, I kind of walked the Louvre with her, and we went through the sections that I knew who the artists were and what was there, and Mona Lisa and Van Gogh's pieces and Rembrandt's portraits and those type of things. So I've seen that, and then I went to Germany for a business trip with another company. Unfortunately, my wife wasn't able to join me then, and ended up at a really bizarre underground bar that was closed for the night except for an art opening. And there was a German artist there doing sculptures and artwork, and got a chance to talk to them for a little while, which was kind of cool because I never expected to be in Germany at an art exhibit in the middle at like 10 o'clock at night at the opening. And it was kind of like, oh wow, that's kind of neat. So that's primarily the most travel I've done for art, but never really gone out and talked to other artists outside of the area. Anybody else? Well, I appreciate you all coming tonight, and I hope you enjoy my piece on the river path. Take a seat, take a selfie, post it. I'll share it and show everybody. And yes, definitely link the Lansing Art Gallery on the photos, and they'll post them up too. So to say a goodbye, I'll just say thank you, which is thank you in Ojibwe. And you guys have a great night, and I appreciate you coming and listening to me talk. Oh yeah.
Walk down and sit and look at the piece. It's just right around the corner here, not too far. And next week's talk is Hannah Tamika Mackey, which is that way. Down there.
How far is it? First is at the Brink Fish Ladder, the other park down there, right at the fish ladder. Right on that hill.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming.